Rewind-A-Dynamite from the post wrestling site. AEW, lighting up the fuse. Sit back and enjoy the bubbly as we hear from John and Wai Ting. Where we're going, we don't need roads, and if the buck stops here, this thing might blow. Everything you hear are opinions of the show, and if you don't like it, go to the forums and let them know.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Rewind-A-Dynamite. It's John Pollock and Wai Ting on this Wednesday night of August the 9th. Hello.
Hey, John. How you doing?
I'm doing good. This has been a busy day.
Oh, yeah. I'll bet. I mean, second show for you, 2 of 3 shows for you.
Somewhat. I ended up doing, well, for those of you that are downloading this show, you will notice that at the end of this show, we are going to have an extra bonus interview for you. So those listening live, you'll have to download to hear this. But we have a bonus interview with Chris Hero, who I spoke with this morning. So if we're being technical, wow. I've kind of done like 4 shows today if we're breaking up this interview. And I managed to watch the G1, which I'm very proud of myself that I got all this done today.
You should be. That deserves a round of an applause. Yeah.
So if you want to check this out, though, before I forget, Chris Hero is chatting in this, first of all, about the West Coast Pro shows that are going on Thursday and Friday night that he's heavily involved with. But we also spoke about his now permanent role as a producer at AEW, what shows he's working on, why he's opting to do this now. And we also get into a bit on Adrian Street. He's, a big studier of British wrestling and got to interact with Adrian Street. So we chatted about that. And the discussion you and I have had quite a lot about kind of from our perspective of watching performers escalate the level of violence and the danger involved, and sort of where you draw the line there of performers who are performing and an audience that I think is largely more caring about the individuals than maybe generations gone by. And there's, I think, good and bad to that if you're a performer, of not necessarily wanting to be policed by your audience, but also understanding that concern. So all this when he had to catch a lift about 30 minutes in, and to do a 20-minute interview with Chris Hero, it's we have to be on the ball. So
wow.
You can check all of that out. Download Rewind-A-Dynamite for that.
And did you happen to do video for it?
Yes, the video portion will be up. We'll have it up on the post YouTube on Thursday morning.
Perfect.
All
Excellent.
set and scheduled, way with a graphic and a description.
How did you fit all that in?
You've raised me well.
Damn,
that's all I can say.
Very impressive.
So yes, and then tonight, if you are here live, well, boy, you can spend all night with us, because as soon as we are done Rewind-A-Dynamite, we're flipping over to the Post Wrestling Cafe for the final double shot for now, because Dark Side of the Ring is completing its 4th season, as we will talk about the season finale, The World According to Marty Jannetty, and Wai and I will chat about GAT,
God's
amusement toy.
Amusement toy, yes.
Bizarre episode. We will do our best to break it down. So that's coming up tonight on the double shot. And as well, coming your way today, Davey Portman and Karen Peterson breaking down the final round robin matches of the G1 Climax. The D block wrapped up today. We'll bring you up to speed in a couple of minutes on that. But we have that up on the cafe now. Wai and I are back Thursday and Saturday, and the finals on the cafe featuring myself, Karen, and WH Park to bring this one home. 19 shows of the G1.
It feels like it's been 19 shows already.
It definitely feels like 19. I can't say, it just breezed by. I mean, man, it's it was a lot. And I think Sunday we're going to do a whole deconstruction of this tournament. What worked? What didn't work? Who would you bring back next year? Who would you not bring back? Best matches. I'm gonna just throw everything at Karen and WH. They're gonna solve the world's problems in about an hour.
I'm looking forward to it. There's been a whole lot of extra coverage over at postwrestlingcafe.com, especially with all the G1 this week. But it's also, of course, Rewind to SmackDown, Collision Course, the Double Shot. All of this stuff is up there right now. So $6 a month gets you up there. By the way, a big announcement for people who might listen to us on Spotify. Just got word today that Patreon has been implemented Spotify integration, or maybe it's Spotify implementing Patreon integration. So I've already kind of like done some of the back end work. You might see that in your Spotify feeds at some point, probably in the near future. But just know that for a long time, people who listen to on Spotify weren't able to get our bonus Patreon shows there. But now I think there might be something that's actually built in. Forgive me, I haven't really like dug too deep into it yet because it hasn't, been put out yet. But it's should be there now, if not in the very near future.
Awesome. That's great news. So there you have it. And I just want to take this chance to thank everyone that has both contributed with our G1 coverage this year, but also for everybody that has supported Post Wrestling on the Post Wrestling Cafe. I mean, that is kind of how we are able to run this site 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 18 shows a day. It's through your support. So if you have jumped on during the G1 season, if you're testing it out, we hope you stick around. We have a lot of cool stuff coming up, including we'll be doing a special edition of Talk next week, a CarCast edition with myself and Wai, where it always gets deep as Wai is sitting back behind the wheel.
The long road just kind of does that to you, right? Gets you in a certain mood. One of the one of the better talks, I feel, and I think we've had some really great talks as a part of this series. So one of the better conversations John and I have had, I would say.
Yes, you and I are a regular MJF and Adam Cole on the road, though we didn't make it to a trampoline park.
No, we didn't. No.
Let's talk about a couple of news items. I did go over this with Brandon Thurston, and that show is also up today with David Bixenspan. So if you want to go check that out, if you want to know the most comprehensive digging and research that went into the WrestleMania 3 attendance figure, this is the show for you. I cannot say it any louder than that. We also chatted with Bix about this season of Dark Side of the Ring, and primarily the Bash at the Beach episode we covered last week, going into the legal case that came out of that Bash at the Beach episode, but also a great discussion on the WrestleMania 3 attendance. And my all-time favorite quote from David Bixenspan: I contacted the Archdiocese when he was trying to figure out the WrestleMania 3 number and what the Pope drew in 1987. So always great to have Bix on the show. So you can check that out as well. The UFC antitrust suit, which is almost 9 years old come December of this year. It's so old, Wai. You can actually find the news segment we did at the Fight Network the day it was launched, with us reacting to it the day it was launched in 2014, and probably being very skeptical at the time that this would ever lead to anything. And I mean, it's far from, something earth-shattering yet for the industry, but here they are almost 9 years later. And there was a ruling by the judge who is overseeing the case that the case is now considered a class action suit for a class of fighters that fought there between 2000 and 2017, the middle of 2017. And this would apply to roughly 1,200 fighters that can be part of this class action suit unless they opt out. And you could read the whole case filing is up if you want to check that out. You can go follow John Nash's work at Bloody Elbow, or Eric McGraken at Combat Sports Law. Those are two reporters that have been covering this very heavily. But anyway, it's a step forward for the case, and at least acknowledging it as a class action suit. It's still, very far away from some kind of conclusive change of significance. But this antitrust suit, it certainly has already paid dividends in the sense of the way Francis Ngannou's contract was worded, and having a sunset clause that allowed him to get out. And now he is going to make earth-shattering money for his life when he faces Tyson Fury later this year. But here we go. It's 9 years later, and they are trying to change the industry around and looking for $800 million to $1.6 billion in damages, which for a class action suit of this kind, it would be treble damages if this were to reach such a finality, that there's an actual ruling for this amount, that would be triple the amount that the UFC would be liable for. And these fighters would have a say in that money. If these 1,200 fighters, if they don't opt out, they would be able to benefit from that. But anyway, it's certainly, you look at the fact that when this was first filed, you would have thought, if this becomes a real headache for the UFC, they would aggressively try to settle this. Well, we're 9 years in, and this has given us access to so much of the UFC's business. It's this suit that is the reason we can see how low that percentage of revenue to fighters actually is, because they have had to hand over these documents. And you have reporters like John Nash that have gone through all of this, and it's a look into fighter pay that we have never had access to before. So it's gone this far, and certainly it's been raised, the fact that you're watching the MLW case go as well, and that does not have the same length of time behind it. But you certainly look at these two industries, and there's many more similarities than differences between the two, and it's just the potential of something larger to happen. But that is the latest in the antitrust suit. All In numbers. WrestleTix just put up the latest figures for the Wembley Stadium show, and they are now at 79,346 tickets distributed. So that would be combination of paid and comps and such. That's how many tickets are out for the event. But this has surpassed the SummerSlam 92 number, and they would be about 1,363 tickets away from hitting the lofty turnstile number of WrestleMania 32 at AT&T Stadium. So, I mean, they're going to hit 80,000. The question will be how much further they can go above and beyond 80,000. Now you are starting to see all the matches rolled out and who is on the show and what the buzz is like that last week, if there is a drive for last minute tickets, and what this thing can finish off at. It's going to be a very historically significant show, and it's going to be an enormous number. So that's where the latest is for All In, as they are about under 700 tickets away from 80,000 distributed.
Wow. Do you have an updated prediction
of what the number will be? I think that I'm thinking that this one will go over. I'll say like 82.5 would be my thought. And maybe I'm being conservative there. And that's like all in, pardon the pun, of tickets out for the event. You think it can go higher?
I think it can. I think so. If it's already at this point, we don't even have a full card, and we're like 3 weeks out, or at least a little under 3 weeks out. So I think there's still a lot of time.
And I'm making that prediction before Grado has been confirmed.
Yes. Well, maybe a few tickets will lower based off of that.
The G1, the final D block matches took place on Wednesday, and we have our round of 8. So the D block, as expected, Jeff Cobb got spoiled, but not in the way I thought. I thought they were just going to give a win to Shane Haste. Instead, what they did was like the old video game trick. If you just wanted to beat your friend, where you just keep them counted out, and Haste hung on to the leg of Cobb, so he was counted out. So Cobb got 1 point, and therefore he still was alive, because in the case of if Zach and Naito were both to lose, or each of them drew, if they drew, they'd all be tied, and Cobb would have won the tiebreaker. But by having Cobb get 1 point, it did eliminate Tanahashi and Goto, which I think kind of eliminated some of the drama for those last 2 matches. I wasn't as big a fan of the way they went about this. I mean, it was a lame finish, but I understand it was for a storyline purpose.
And it made sense with Haste doing it for Zach, who's his
that was it. And
leader.
Eddie Kingston brought this up, and Eddie Kingston was great on commentary, but he was basically stating he is doing this because Zach would lose the tiebreaker. So like, Haste is out. Haste is here to play spoiler and to do this for Zach. So you did have a story here. I think you could have just had Haste beat the guy, but I guess they wanted him kind of hovering over with those tiebreaker wins. And then the last 2 matches, you had Zach beating Goto in a hell of a match with, man, he applied the Cobra twist, and he's digging the elbow into the injured ribs of Goto, which have been hurt the whole tournament. Zach was great in this match. He has had a phenomenal tournament. I would say, like, he's outside of Ospreay, he might be my favorite performer of this year's G1. But he gets the big submission over Goto, just tying every limb of Goto's up. So Zach clinches, and he's in. And then the final match is Naito and Tanahashi. And boy, if you're someone that you've been a bit down on Tanahashi, man, he turned the clock back, and he had easily his best match of the tournament. I would say his best match of the year, maybe even going back further. He was excellent in this match, and he immediately goes for an inside cradle. And all match long, he's trying to get this inside cradle, and he goes all out for this final round robin match. The high fly flow to the floor. He goes for one in the ring, landing on the knees, and then Naito captures him with a tornado DDT, and he spikes Tanahashi. You think this guy is dead, and it was a more than convincing way for Tanahashi to stay down, but the cherry on top, Naito uses an inside cradle to pin Tanahashi and eliminates Tanahashi. Naito moves on. Excellent match. I would recommend the last two matches because they were tremendous, but man, Tanahashi and Naito was a great match.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. I mean, as far as the result goes, I think a lot of people's prediction for those two advancing, but I think they got there in a way that certainly added a little bit of drama to it. And despite not being in the playoffs, I think Cobb gains a whole lot coming off of this G1. They really, for a good chunk of it, strapped the rocket to him.
So the final 8, which will be on Thursday, we have Sonata against Evil, Okada against Zack Sabre Jr., David Finlay against Will Ospreay, and Hikuleo, who they did do an injury angle with on the undercard today, where they had the War Dogs beat up Hikuleo after the tag match and just beat him down with like chairs. So I guess the idea is he's going to go in injured for this match with Naito, and maybe is a bit of an out for Hikuleo, who they want to protect, as I don't think too many people see Hikuleo winning this one. But do you have a pick for the final 4? Who do you see advancing way?
Ask me tomorrow.
Okay. Well, there you have it. Not putting his prognosticator hat on, but Wei and I will have a show for you on Thursday going through the quarterfinal matches of the G1. This is a note for Canadian viewers. So we had heard about this like a week or so ago, that the long and winding free trial for TSN Plus, months and months and months of this free trial, finally they announced it's coming to an end. And it was coming to an end today on Wednesday. And people were asking, if you are a TSN cable subscriber, would you still have access to TSN Plus? And so I inquired with TSN, and they confirmed to me it's a standalone service. So this, and I tried today, like you cannot log in just with your TSN, with your cable login. So why this is important is because in Canada, TSN Plus is the only place to watch Rampage and Collision. Dynamite you're fine with as long as you get TSN, and that is broadcast on TSN2 each week. But for TSN Plus, it is $8 per month or $80 for the year. And I would say if you're somebody that has been keeping up with Collision and Rampage, I don't know if you're going to be spending this amount of money. At least I don't imagine a high volume of regular viewers going this way if they're going to keep up with these shows. I see many going alternate ways if they're going to watch this, because I think this is a hefty ask for people if they are just getting this service for 2 wrestling shows.
Yeah, I guess it's depending on the person. Like if you're suggesting,
some will, but I think this will be a big turnoff for some to pay $8 a month for those shows.
I certainly would have said that would be the case if it was only Rampage that was being offered as part of TSN Plus. The addition of Collision actually makes it far more attractive. Rampage is a 1-hour program that at that point was, I would even say, pretty skippable. But Collision has proven to be a show that I think if you're an AEW fan has been pretty must see. So it's probably like Collision has greatly helped make TSN Plus feel attractive.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to hear from Canadians if they end up getting TSN Plus. I was told one person responded to me that signed up for it, and they do have every Dynamite, every Rampage. I assume every Collision is up there on top of it. So
on TSN Plus?
On TSN Plus. So that's a bit of an addition if you want to go check out the old episodes.
So there was another note in the statement that said for TSN Plus is available for people who sign up through their app or website.
Yeah, I think that has to do with like what used to be like TSN Go and is now that like it is a separate
so let's say I don't subscribe to TV, I just want to watch TSN through the app and also through the website. How much do I pay? Or what do I subscribe to?
I don't know what the amount is if you want to get I don't know if you can get like the TSN linear channel if you don't have TV. I think this only gives you access to TSN Plus itself.
There has to be a way to just, because Sportsnet offers it, where you just pay like something like $16-20 a month and you get the TV channels without subscribing to cable.
There might be. I'm just not aware of what the option is. So maybe someone can fill you in.
All right.
And the last note here, Wai, October the 14th, Logan Paul is going to fight Dillon Danis, who is a high-level jiu-jitsu practitioner who, I mean, his claim to fame is that this guy doesn't fight. He just has kept a presence for himself and has kind of just scorned himself from these industries. He is signed to fight Logan Paul on October 14th in Manchester, England. And this will be on the same card where KSI is fighting Tommy Fury. So this is going to be Logan Paul's boxing fight against a guy who has never boxed before. And I would say this is a relatively safe fight for Logan Paul.
Right. I guess they just needed any opponent with some sort of justifiable combat sports background, right?
And also Dillon Danis, I mean, he's had a on again, off again relationship with Conor McGregor, but they are training together, and you've got the Conor McGregor involvement here as well. Like for Logan Paul, this one makes a lot of sense. And you also have KSI on this card, who is a big deal, especially in England. So I'm sure that especially in England, that this is going to do pretty well, this prime card. And this is going to be, just your continued influencer boxing cards. But I think by and large, there is a fatigue factor. And while we don't have a number yet for Nate Diaz and Jake Paul, it might buck this trend. What we have seen is a lot of these cards, they do generate a lot of interest, but then the pay-per-view number comes out. And it would suggest to you that if people are watching these, many people are just streaming these shows and not buying them. And you
like
would
illegally
think
pirating, you mean?
With a younger, savvier audience, that's probably a realistic conclusion that you can come to for these. It's not so much the lack of interest, but for the model that you have here on pay-per-view, these fans are not spending $60, $70 for boxing when they can find a way around that.
Well, $60, $70 is a lot of money for a Gen Zer.
Like they're laughing at me talking about this TSN Plus obstacle for Canadians. Like, are you kidding me?
Maybe there's value in the promotion of Prime. I have to think they'd be profiting somehow off of this entire thing, but it looks like maybe just
they'll probably do a very good gate at this arena in Manchester at the AO Arena. Like I think this will sell tickets, and there will be interest for this
from somebody. Sure, yeah.
All right. All your news can be found up at postwrestling.com. And of course, you can join us, postwrestlingcafe.com. Again, we will be live as soon as we finish the Dynamite review, chatting about the world according to Marty Jannetty. Tonight, we're talking Dynamite from the Nationwide Arena in Columbus, Ohio. And we're starting off with a mandatory meeting of the JAS, all in the ring except for Chris Jericho, who is introduced by Matt Menard. And Jericho says that the JAS came out to the ring without him, but he is here as their friend, and he gets cut off by Daniel Garcia, who is the first of many to run him down. He's pissed about getting hit by the bat last week and Jericho pinning him, and that Garcia changed who he was, turned his back on his friends and his heroes for Jericho. I chose you. Why don't you ever choose us? And Garcia can't do this anymore, does his dance, and then he walks off and leaves. And then everyone took their turns. This was like an intervention, and they've just realized that they can no longer support this man. So Hager's next. He says that Jericho made him a lot of money, and he admits, I did like that hat, but he doesn't appreciate Jericho, so he takes off. Then it's Anna Jay and Ty Conti's turn, and Ty says that she is no longer proud to be part of this group. She feels sick, and it's not even because she's pregnant. She's going to go off and have this baby, come back to become a champion next year, and will do it without Jericho's help. Anna Jay is focused on winning the women's title and not about appreciating Jericho. And then Angelo Parker gives a heartfelt speech about loving everything about being a sports entertainer, and he tried so hard to make Chris proud of him. He gave his blood. He stood by his side, but what has Chris ever given to me? So Parker has nothing left to give, and Menard and Guevara remain the last two. And Menard says that you were my childhood hero. When I got my first paycheck when I was 15, I bought a Chris Jericho t-shirt, and he Jericho invited him into his home, helped him get into AEW when he was out of a job and his wife was 8 months pregnant. And it never sat well with him that guys he came up with, like Eddie Kingston and Kevin Steen, hated Jericho's guts. But now he's starting to see why. So Menard leaves, and then Guevara knocks down the microphone and says that he's always been fighting Jericho's battles. And I'm not going to walk out on you because I'm your friend, but you have a lot of stuff to work out. And when you do, maybe I'll be here. And that is leaving Chris Jericho to contemplate all these people that he has lost in the Jericho Appreciation Society. This was a really lengthy segment. This was like the first 15 minutes of the show.
Seems like a pretty definitive end to the JAS. I mean, there's always the possibility of some form of swerve, but I don't really sense it because I think them coming back at this point would just be such a groan to so much of the audience. And overall, you know, if we're to assess maybe the success of the stable, I wouldn't say it was as, to me, effective as the Inner Circle. Now, there are exceptions. I mean, the point of these stables with Jericho is to elevate the roster members, and certainly somebody like Menard and Parker, Garcia, and even Anna and JS, I think they gained a whole lot from being a part of it. So in that sense, maybe you could call it a success. But I feel like this is a group that's just kind of fizzled out, you know, rather than had like any sort of big impactful like series of matches or feuds. And I don't know if it really lived up to its full potential.
Yeah, it's in the back. Renee catches up with Jericho and he's reflecting on what happened. And Don Callis apologizes if he played any role in this. And Jericho says, I have an answer about joining your family. I'll give you your answer next week. So yeah, I guess we will get another segment next week, maybe with some kind of name like The Family Affair or something like that. And yeah, so you think it's just going to be he just is embraced by Don Callis and he moves on into this?
I mean, it could be anything. I just don't know. I just don't know if like a year and a half of like Jericho Appreciation Society and like sort of this like false finish type of thing. I don't know if there's anything more for like the members of the group to gain, you know, from being a part of it. Certainly somebody like a Garcia is more than ready to just kind of break off on his own. And the others, it just feels like it would be treading water by this point. So I wouldn't even do a tease like this if it's just to bring them back, because I just feel like the audience wouldn't necessarily care for it.
Do you like the idea at all of next week, like Don Callis stabs this guy in the back, and that gets us to Will Ospreay coming back and to this direction that had been rumored?
So Jericho is a babyface at this point,
coming out of it. Yeah.
I just don't know if there's that much like public like sentiment for people wanting to see Jericho as a babyface. I think he still works as a heel right now. Probably would be better. Especially in England. I don't think Will Ospreay is going to be a heel at all.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
If that's even the match, you know, that was a rumored match, and I'm curious to see how they might get there coming off of this Callis Jericho situation, if that's the case. But they could change the match to something else.
We have a recap of FTR's challenge to the Young Bucks on Collision for All In, and the Bucks come out for their match with the Hardys. Their last match taking place at last year's Double or Nothing, and the Hardys are out with Brother Zay and Ethan Page, and the Bucks are they hit their risky business move and onto Matt, and then there's a dive by Nick. They go through the break, and Jeff hits the Whisper in the wind onto both Bucks. Nick then stops a Twist of Fate, landing a super kick. We get a series of super kicks all around, and then a 3D by the Young Bucks onto Jeff for a 2 count. And Matt stops an Indie Taker. There's double Twist of Fates to the Bucks, and then Jeff goes for the Swanton, hits it onto Nick, but Matt makes the save. Matt then super kicks Matt Hardy on the turnbuckle and super kicks the ankle of Jeff, who just crashes off the turnbuckle and just plummets to the mat. And we get a BTE trigger onto Matt Hardy, and the Bucks win in 11 minutes and 15 seconds with the two teams shaking hands afterward.
I thought this was a good match. You know, great natural chemistry between these like longtime generational rivals, and probably the best Hardys match I've seen in quite some time. Hardys, I thought, looked really capable here. You know, they were relying on a lot of their sort of like staples here, a lot of reliance on like interesting sort of variations of or combinations, I should say, of the twist of fate. But like the swanton, poetry in motion, all that stuff looked good. So I think for me, my expectations weren't so high, but they were able to live up to the standard that you would expect, you know, of a Hardys versus Bucks match for TV. So I was satisfied.
Yeah, I think I had a similar takeaway. I wasn't going into this really expecting a whole lot, but the key was, you know, an audience that saw these four as stars, and they certainly did. And I mean, with the Hardys, like you can see they're really getting around slow, but for all the key stuff, like you mentioned, like, you know, Jeff hit the whisper in the wind, he hit the swanton, they, you know, all the key stuff, the poetry in motion, like they hit all the stuff that was going to resonate the most with the audience, and you got like a fine, nice television match out of it.
I think it's at this point, it's like a perfect TV match to get the Bucks ready for something else.
Yeah, you're not looking at what they were doing like years ago in Ring of Honor, but yeah, it was like a fine opener and probably meant something to the audience there to be seeing these two teams having a match together. So the Bucks address FTR, but before they can continue, FTR come out with the tag titles. The crowd is chanting "All In." This is awesome. And they just stand there. They accept the challenge, and the match is official. The rubber match for August 27th with the tag titles on the line. Simple setup. And the audience took this as they treated this like a big match when it was confirmed.
On paper, it's a very attractive match. Yeah.
Well, it is a pay-per-view, and that means it's time for a tournament, an AEW tournament. And this is to set up a four-way women's match for the championship at All In. We are going to get the winner of tonight's title match with Hikaru Shida and Anna Jay joining Toni Storm, who is invoking her automatic rematch. And then we will have separate matches with Saraya against Sky Blue on Rampage and the Bunny against Britt Baker next Wednesday on Dynamite, which seem like as much layups as you could imagine for who's going to be in this match. I mean, I do not sense any upsets with the Bunny and Sky Blue, all due respect.
Yeah, I don't either. But I mean, you know, I guess it's like, how would they even have justified the inclusions of, I guess, you know, some of the wrestlers in this particular tournament when I feel like you have more other wrestlers with more winning records, but it's besides the point. I mean, in the end here, we're looking to get a four-way match, which I think is a pretty decent call. Like, especially if you're looking to get Saraya on this card and not having to rely on a singles match with her. If you're looking to give exposure to somebody like a Britt Baker, Toni Storm, and Shida getting all, you know,
and they're all tied together. Like they've been involved together in this program for months.
Right. You'll have a lot of exactly. You'll have a lot of Storm Saraya interaction. Shida, you know, Baker are both against the Outcasts as well. So yeah, it does make sense from a story perspective as well.
Last week, they showed MJF and Adam Cole celebrating the announcement of their title match, and MJF suggests that they go skinny dipping with rats. And Adam Cole says, no, we're going to a trampoline park. And we go to like a trampoline park here. And
you ever been to one?
No, I haven't. You?
They look fun. Yeah, there's one nearby. I've never been to it.
Okay. This was actually proposed for Hogan and Savage ahead of WrestleMania 5. This was what they were going to do. Then they went with the Mega Powers exploding angle, but I think they could have done this, you know, done gymnastics lessons together. MJF hears about dodgeball and he's interested in playing this. So we get these slow motion clips of MJF nailing these kids with the dodgeball and taunting them. So one of the kids comes over and calls them nerds. And Adam Cole looks down at this girl and says, you shouldn't talk like that. So this little girl gives him the middle finger. So Cole unleashes MJF and whips the ball at this child. So they have bonded over child abuse.
Well, if a child gives you the finger, I mean, she was asking for it, really. Did you like this one?
I mean, it was like these things are very popular and I see them continuing. Like they're certainly like not my cup of tea for these guys, but I can't deny like this has absolutely worked for them and the audience has loved them. So there's really nothing to complain about them.
Yeah, I thought this was totally cute and completely like of the vibe that I think they've set at this point. I thought even this one was a step above some of their previous outings. But because they're already over, because again, the tone of this entire relationship has already been set.
This
I
was
mean,
ahead of Kowloon's.
yeah, it was for me. Yeah. Yeah, I think they're exactly what this team has done to make people love them. So
They also
think they're
got
great.
all over this show. I mean, this was the first of 2 segments with MJF and Cole, and this I don't know what the numbers are. This has to be the least amount of wrestling on a Dynamite I can recall. Like, this was 4 matches, and there was a ton of talking on this show.
Interesting. Oh.
We get highlights of the Anything Goes match, followed by the parking lot fight from last week, and we go to a BCC promo backstage where John Moxley compares the BCC going after the best friends to eagles don't hunt flies. And he hopes the best friends aren't here tonight. And they never think they can win. We know we can win. And then Claudio brings up the injury to Pac, that he's going to be out for quite a while, it appears. And Yuta mentions the fact that Pac is going to miss Wembley Stadium as a result of this injury. And Moxley ends it with BCC doesn't fear death. Death fears us. Just imagine this guy like walking around with like a notepad, and whenever these things come to him, just writing them down, because he seems to have an endless list of these just go-to lines
of like good t-shirt catchphrases.
Eagles don't hunt flies.
Yeah, lovely. I mean, if there was any sort of question coming off of like, you know, the end of the Elite feud, whether or not the BCC were turning baby faces, I mean, we pretty much had that indication, like even last week or even prior to that. But this episode certainly cemented their status as heels, and big time heels, arguably the most dominant heel stable in the entire company, and taking credit for Pac's, you know, injury and rubbing the salt in the wounds of him not being able to make Wembley, I think was wonderful material.
Did they ever explain what his injury is, where it occurred?
Isn't the assumption that it occurred in the Claudio match?
I guess it's assumed.
His last
like he still did the gravity match after, remember?
You're right. Yeah, totally forgot about that. Huh. Well, I mean, I don't know then.
I'm choosing to forget, not because it wasn't a good show. It was actually a great show. But when I think of the like that ROH show, and we came out of it, like the Lucha Brothers were leaning towards going heel, and the BCC, we were all confused where the BCC was going after that. Much more clear now, but it seems as though wherever we went in those couple of days with the BCC, it has reverted back to where they were pre.
Remind me of the Lucha Brothers like heel thing, because they were
they yanked the referee out, and they were getting all heelish with Pac as well, like with the Death Triangle.
They were doing something with the best friends, and
that's right. Yeah, from earlier in the night.
Anyway,
we move on.
Okay.
Jack Perry against Rob Van Dam for the FTW Championship, and we've got Perry out with like Jerry Lynn style gear. RVD comes out again to Pantera, and Perry jumps him before the introductions in the ring. But then RVD takes over, and Perry rolls out of the ring, avoiding a rolling thunder. And Perry gets draped on the guardrail, and RVD hits the spinning leg drop, which is quite remarkable that he is still doing this move.
Oh my God. And this looked like the most devastating I've ever seen him do something like this. I don't know if it was just because these might be longer distances, you know, between the apron and the guardrail, and that somehow might have affected his ankle, but like he bent Perry in half, and Perry's face just like whipped right into the guardrail. I mean, it looked great. I'm sure it didn't feel all that nice either.
Yeah, I'm sure they weren't doing a run through of this spot. They were just going to save it for live and get the one take. Mm-hmm. There's a rolling thunder to Perry with a chair on top of him, goes for the split-legged moonsault, but he like paused, and then he goes for it after Jack Perry has already moved out of the way. So the announcers are just trying to say, well, he was trying to adjust on the top. Then we get a ref bump, and RVD is crotched on the top rope, and Perry is on top and then gets knocked off the turnbuckle through a table on the floor. And this is FTW rules, so anything goes. They could have, one of them, if they had chosen to bring out scissors and attack the guy with scissors, you could have gotten away with that.
Well, FTW, you know, of course. Yeah.
There's a 5-star frog splash to Perry, but Bryce Remsburg is still out. So Aubrey sprints down. Perry kicks out. There's a big reaction for that. And as RVD is protesting, Jack Perry low blows him, drives RVD into a chair in the corner, and rolls him up in 9:34, retaining the FTW title. And Taz is getting to the end of his rope here with his patience, and he's getting sick of seeing this guy with the FTW title. But I have to say, for what you were expecting, I think Rob Van Dam, like, there are performers that can certainly get by on just pure nostalgia, and you can do very little and still get by. Rob Van Dam is a guy, like, his gimmick is being like a super athlete. So it's much tougher for me. And like, I watched his Impact run, and it was, it was certainly like several steps slow. And this one, like, whether it was, hey, I'm coming in for one night, it's my style of match. I don't think you can fault this. I think this was the right call for a TV match. I don't think this needed to be like a big show type of match for the two, but I think RVD did fine, and the crowd like loved him in this as well.
I thought he looked great. Like, maybe whatever state he was in for the Impact run, he's clearly found some motivation from somewhere to get into incredible shape. And it resulted in, I think, a very, very successful TV outing here on a big stage. For somebody who, has been around as long as he has, wrestling the style that he has, for him to be able to still like look like Rob Van Dam and to be able to pull off all of these signature spots this well, I think it's incredibly impressive.
I mean, the guy's taken good care of himself, over the years.
Stretching, isn't it?
That's stretching.
And who knows what else. That is a part of his ritual, of course. But beyond RVD, who I think, at this point, I wouldn't be against seeing him come back, for something more on a maybe occasional basis. Listen, we could have had Rob Van Dam versus Jeff Hardy on this show, and I think it would have turned out pretty well if they, decided to put that match together in 2023. But beyond that, I thought Jack Perry's improvements as a heel over this very short amount of time that he's played a heel have been pretty significant. I thought he felt like a very natural heel in ring here, made great use of a lot of heel shortcuts, and the crowd has completely taken to him doing all these things. So he's made a pretty impressive transformation beyond my expectations at this point. So, I think he's doing well, and we wonder what match he'll have at Wembley.
Yeah, I mean, you think of like this all leading to Hook, but the way he's calling it and stuff, like, if ever Taz could do one more match, like, this should be
he cannot. I
don't think he should either. But
if he could have done one more match, I think we would have seen him at one of the one night stands, and I don't think now's going to be any better.
Renee speaks with the Lucha Brothers and Alex Abrahantes, and they say that the BCC, they fight to maim and hurt people. Well, we're out for revenge, and Phoenix calls them the Blackpool Coward Club. Which t-shirt would you buy? Blackpool Coward Club or Eagles Don't Hunt Flies?
I'm not much of a phrase on a t-shirt type of guy, but I'm sure both would be top sellers.
Yeah. How about Von Wagner's new shirt?
I haven't seen it. What is it?
You're going to get tabled.
Oh, I have seen it. That's the one. Yeah.
That's one I could totally see you wearing.
Yeah.
MJF and Cole come out. This is at the top of the hour, and MJF denies ever calling the Midwest mid. And if there's footage of me saying that going out, it's heavily edited and fake, because my favorite place in the US is the Midwest. And if I'm lying, then God strike me down. And he did not, in fact, get hit by a lightning bolt, but this man was very brave here as he tempted God. And Cole says that, I am going to beat you for the title at All In. So MJF takes this as an invite. Oh, you want to do a promo battle? And he proceeds to call Adam Cole so skinny and ghostly white that if this were the 80s, Hogan would have snorted you.
Oh,
Ha ha.
Not one for the kiddies.
No. And then Cole starts yelling. He doesn't want a promo battle. The crowd did want a promo battle. So Cole says, you know what I really want? The ROH tag team titles. I think everyone's like, what? You're headlining this Wembley show and you want the ROH tag team titles. As everyone was furiously looking up who again are the ROH tag champions. And he says he owes his career to ROH. He's a 3-time ROH champion, a TV champion, even won the Survival of the Fittest tournament, but never won those tag belts. And he lists off past teams, including the Kings of Wrestling, Red Dragon, and the Briscoes, and suggests that they challenge Aussie Open on something called 0 Hour at All In. And MJF is like, wait a minute. You want me to wrestle twice in one night? It's like, you want me to wrestle on the pre-show on top of this? And he surveys the crowd and says, all right, do you want us to challenge for the ROH Tag Team Champions? This was the best save of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And they issue the challenge to Aussie Open. Now, before we get to our favorite character in all of wrestling, in the neck brace, what did you think about this and the idea behind this? Like, they're going to wrestle on the 0 hour, presumably win the tag belts, or have some. I don't know. What are you expecting with this? Like, this is certainly a kind of left field.
It's very unconventional, to have your main event wrestlers wrestle on the kickoff show in a tag team match. I mean, we see it all the time on the go home episode of WWE Raw leading into a pay-per-view. Oh, could these two partners get along, like that sort of thing. But this is a very different type of story where you can justifiably see them actually win the tag team championships. There's so many ways that they can go. Obviously, if they lose, that's a way to build up to maybe added interest for the main event. But if they win, which is also very possible because this team has just, been completely on fire, how would that heat up the main event? And just even the decision to use the kickoff as a potential spot for a significant plot point for your main event of the pay-per-view is very unique. So I have to think they have something really clever planned to
do you think there's any way the 0 hour, we're talking about all these broadcast options, that the 0 hour airs on a conventional TNT or TBS?
Your guess is as good as mine, isn't it? But what time would it have to be? 12 o'clock?
Noon Eastern.
Yeah. I mean, what would they be expecting, in terms of performance for a 12 p.m.
I don't think anything, but it would just be more. This just seems like a lot for YouTube.
You're right. Yeah. I don't know. It's a very, different. I'm sure there's some reasoning for it. If you ask Tony Khan, from a business metric perspective, because otherwise this would have been a good match for a Dynamite, wouldn't it? Or even a Rampage.
Yeah, you could certainly could you just tell the exact same story by them challenging on the Go Home Dynamite?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But obviously, they want people watching this 0 hour, and this is probably as effective a match as you can put on there.
I think it's the biggest 0 hour match you've ever had.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I guess the idea is more than even the match. The match should be very good, but it's what kind of angle is coming out of this. They could win the belts. They could also have, some miscommunication, and that leads you into the main event in some way. There's certainly a lot of different options at your disposal.
If it's a matchup that'll significantly change the way we look at the main event, then they're banking on a lot of people, catching this 0 hour, because I mean, in the past, I would assume 0 hours to do just a very small fraction of what, a Dynamite would do. So it seems like they might be banking on a lot of people to try to watch this one.
Yeah. I mean, what other titles does Adam Cole want to get? Is he going to go after, the strong open weight tag titles after this? I mean,
he did a good job, I thought, of justifying his desire for the ROH tag titles here. I thought MJF was absolutely tremendous. We get to see him play very much like heelish babyface is maybe the best way to put it. Very much like The Rock. He's the type of villain that still has that villainous attitude, but now again, he's our asshole. We know we hate it when he's on the other team, but when he's playing for us, he's our goon. Remember when Ty Domi played for the Jets? Nobody liked him, right? Then he started playing for the Leafs, and we love the guy.
And he's our goon. Yeah. Well, you also have the story, and I don't know if people would be crazy about this idea of him losing again, but MJF losing the fall again, and now it's the second tag title loss that this team has had. And the first one, it was MJF blaming himself. This one, MJF loses again, but then he retains the belt, and then we're coming out of All In, and Adam's got no titles. He's lost MJF, and MJF it's you dropped the fall in these matches where it benefited both of us, but then you rise to the occasion in the main event, and that's sort of building for Cole's turn on MJF. That's one way off the top of my head.
Very interesting and very possible. What would Roderick Strong do, I guess is the other question.
Adam. Out comes Roderick Strong. I love this guy.
Me too.
He has become like my guilty pleasure of like any it's him and
Von Wagner.
I was gonna say, I was gonna pick a character out of the Bear, but yeah, Von Wagner tops them all too. He can't believe that Adam Cole wants to win the tag titles with MJF instead of an ROH legend like himself. So MJF calls him a jealous ex-girlfriend and says, do what all of you generic white people do, and basically tells him to go home and listen to Taylor Swift, you bland bitch. And Strong asks Cole, are you going to let him say that to me? Are you? And the Kingdom was right about Cole never really being my friend. So the Kingdom come out. They console poor Roddy and his broken neck. And Cole then shoves MJF, and he's really upset for MJF pushing his buttons. And MJF starts to get upset, and then Cole sees that he's getting mad. So Cole apologizes. They calm down, they hug, and then MJF sends Cole to go check on Roderick in the back.
It was really a good reintroduction of some tension between MJF and Cole. I mean, they continue to just kind of fan those flames in the background. Not so much in the background, maybe at the end of this segment, but I think it's all been very effective. On the surface, they look like the best of friends. You know, they're throwing dodgeballs at little kids together. But underneath it all, like one of them can snap at any second, you know, and it might not just be MJF that's prone to that. So I think this story is in a really, like, it's being told really well. And I absolutely like Roderick Strong might be like, you know, just best breakout star. Who would have thought when he came from like NXT and into AEW that he'd get over playing this sort of character, you know, with the neck brace.
I mean, this was kind of what he was doing at the end of NXT. It was like, here was a guy who was all like, you know, had the busted up neck and everything. It was like, this is the version of Roderick Strong we want, the neck brace Roddy.
I mean, it's amusing. It's certainly something for the Kingdom to make them relevant on Dynamite itself. And yeah, I'm so in. I think everybody will benefit at the end of this story.
Moxley and Claudio against the Lucha Brothers. We see Moxley in with a double DDT. Yuta gets involved with a belt shot, and then Claudio military presses Phoenix up for a cutter to Moxley. That only leads to a 2 count. They go through the break. There's a spike pile driver on Phoenix. As Taz notes, that's how he broke his neck. Phoenix misses a splash off the top, and it's Moxley with like a somersault into a cutter onto Penta, and then all 4 men go down from strikes. The crowd is chanting for everyone, and Penta leaps off the top into a European uppercut from Claudio. The Lucha Brothers hit their own spike pile driver, and then Yuta grabs Phoenix to stop the Fear Factor. Abrahantes grabs Yuta, and then Phoenix dives onto Yuta on the floor. Moxley then rolls up Penta, and we see him grab the tights to get him in 13 minutes and 12 seconds. But the camera totally missed Claudio coming in. This was like the key spot of the match. He rips off Penta's mask before the roll-up, and even the announcers have to state, we all missed this. Thankfully, the replay showed it clearly, but this was just like a total miss on this finish, and like the key part that led to, because you just see him like lose to a roll-up, even with the tights. It just felt like a kind of deflating finish, but made sense once you saw the replay. And then with the post-match attack, they continue to beat on them, and Claudio puts on Penta's mask and takes the mask with him. So obviously that's going to continue in some form or fashion.
Yeah, you would think that you know, this is all leading up to further interaction between the Lucha Brothers and the Blackpool Combat Club, but I guess is, you know,
can't do mask versus hair with Claudio.
No, you cannot. No, what can you? He's got nothing to risk.
He's got the title.
So, I guess so. You're right. Yeah.
Maybe Penta's going to say, I've never won the ROH world title before. In fact, I've never won any ROH. Actually, they had the tag titles, but nonetheless.
Yeah. You would think though, this is like anything on the show, you would assume is a setup for something at Wembley, and you know, it could be a singles match between Penta and Claudio. Obviously they can't do trios right now, which would have been really perfect, I think, for you know, Pac to have that sort of spotlight, but that doesn't seem to be happening. Can they do another tag match, you know, rematch here? Would the best friends be involved? You know, it seems like we are leading to some sort of combination of these 3 teams, and
I think on one of the pay-per-views you got to get Moxley and Orange Cassidy. That seems like a singles match that they have set up that is, you can still do.
Right. But yeah, we'll see. You know, this was a very entertaining, spectacular TV match. I guess I'm just left wondering, like, what sort of like role is left for the Lucha Brothers at this point.
Kenny Omega's in the back, and Alex Marvez wants a scoop. What are you doing at All In? And Kenny said, I'm doing a sit-down interview with Jim Ross next week to discuss what's next for me.
So what did he come here for?
You know how much flying he had to do to come all the way here to Columbus. So to announce he's doing an interview next week.
He was agent producing maybe he's doing some translation work perhaps.
The Mogul Embassy come out. Dude, Prince Nana, he was just great here. Shut your stinking face as he's screaming at the fans. And
this faction has taken such a huge step up since Swerve has become, an addition. And I think since AR Fox has come in, they feel complete. Are
you saying AR Fox is their Dominic? Just the missing piece?
It could be, really could be. I mean, but just like the look of them, like these, towering men, like all in the ring together. And I think it's certainly helped the embassy before, which was I don't know. I've always found the Prince Nana embassy gimmick a little bit goofy. Now they feel threatening. Now they feel dangerous. So yeah.
So they explain how they traveled to Seattle. They placed the fear of God in Nick Wayne, and they are above the law. Fox calls out Darby Allin, and Darby comes out, and he says, "Tell them the real story. I tried to call you, but you never answered." It's 5 years you tried to call him, and he didn't pick up. At what year are you stating, you know what, this year I'm taking off. I'm going to, hopefully he calls me.
So, I mean, maybe you try a few times and then by the third time you just give up,
Yeah. So he
maybe
tried
to change his number.
He says he tried to help AR Fox with his problems, but he had to leave so Fox could save himself, and says, on your own, you got here to AEW. And if this is about me putting in a good word for Nick Wayne, then fine. He respects Fox for helping him out when he needed it. But you've got friends, so do I. And the lights go out, and when they turn on, Sting is in the ring with his bat, and he drills everybody and then points to the sign for All In as Swerve escapes. And we are getting a coffin tag match with Sting and Darby against Swerve and AR Fox at Wembley. No Nick Wayne in this match.
Yeah, no.
But they are doing Darby and Nick Wayne together on TV next week against.
I imagine Nick might come in ringside and might have a spot in the match, but for a pay-per-view, you want to promote a Sting. You want to have that sort of big name attached to it.
He should have some kind of photo to break the glass over Swerve's head,
photo of what you think?
Rick Ross.
Oh, okay.
They should spare no expense. Rick Ross should be, if not at Wembley, at least on the Go Home TV.
Yeah.
I can hope, can't I?
He was in the Mogul affiliates, therefore he's automatically in the Mogul Embassy.
Sting and Rick Ross on the last TV before All In. I up my attendance estimate if I get that segment. Okay.
Yeah.
Then they hit 90.
The coffin stip was just kind of out of nowhere, right? Did they just put it on the graphic right after this segment? But
coffin tag match. So you got to put both of them simultaneously into the coffins. If one goes into the coffin, do they just lie in there for 5 more minutes?
I imagine it might be a coffin big enough to fit 2. I have to think
that would make sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So here is the lineup for Rampage. It's Saraya against Sky Blue for the shot in the 4-way at the pay-per-view. Orange Cassidy against Johnny TV for the international title. That'll actually be probably a pretty good match.
They mentioned Cassidy going for some sort of record. I thought he already had the record for most offenses, unless this is some other one that he
passed Jade's.
Because
I think Jade is the only one who would have had more.
What they celebrating him being the winningest champion? This was a debate in the chat room a week ago or 2 weeks ago. So
I don't know.
Clarify.
Something to celebrate on Rampage. Saturday's Collision has the House of Black against CMFTR for the Trios belts. The Acclaimed will be in action, and then Chris Statlander and Willow Nightingale against Mercedes Martinez and Diamante coming off last week's attack. And then next week on Dynamite, this is the best, okay? We've had face-to-faces, we've had contract signings, we've had the rules of engagement. MJF and Adam Cole speak about their main event. Simple and to the point. They're going to speak about their main event.
Yeah.
sit-down interview with Kenny Omega, Britt Baker against the Bunny, and Darby and Nick Wayne against the Gates of Agony. So we will see what else is added to Dynamite. Doesn't blow me away, the Dynamite lineup, but we're still inching toward. At the very least, we'll probably get Omega's role on the show, Jericho's role on the show. Like, I would think by this time next week, we've got all the key matches for All In.
Yeah. To me, that's the draw of next week's Dynamite, is to like hear what Kenny Omega's match will be at All
And
In.
we'll have the 4 participants for the women's match by next week. Do you see us going into All In with the main event for All Out announced? Just the main event.
Yes, I do. Yeah. I mean, I would hate a 1 week announcement of a pay-per-view main event. I don't see that.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they'll set up the stakes, you know, like, oh, if MJF beats Adam Cole, then he meets, you know, such and such. Or maybe they'll have CM Punk's title defense be
that's what I was thinking. Is like maybe Chicago, it's like Punk announces he's defending his championship and they have that. It's not a case of necessarily coming out of the MJF Cole match. It's CM Punk's show.
Right.
So to speak.
And is I guess we don't know the stakes for Punk versus Joe yet, but you'd presume it would be for the real world championship.
Right. Well, they've got to answer that challenge on Saturday. So I guess that will be, yeah, you're right. You have that in there as well. So, I mean, we're starting to get like, we're not at the full card yet, but it's certainly taking shape. Main event for the second week in a row, the women closed the show with Hikaru Shida defending the women's title against Anna Jay with Menard and Parker in her corner. They went through a picture-in-picture and they fought on the edge. Shida pulled out her chair, but when she went to leap off of it, Menard and Parker blocked her. Jay then sent Shida into the steps with a flatliner and brings her into the ring, applies the Queen Slayer, continues to reapply it as Shida's trying to break it, and then finally kicks off the turnbuckle and falls back and gets out of the submission attempt. And then with that, hits a Falcon Arrow for a 2 count and the Katana. And as Shida goes for the pin, Angelo Parker reaches into the ring for Anna Jay's hand. The ref keeps counting 3, so the match ends at 8:48. The announcers have no idea what Angelo Parker is doing, nor did I. So I'm hoping, Wai, you can explain what was happening here, because I was just so confused by what they were trying to do.
Clear miscommunication with whatever was happening. I'm suspecting this might have had something to do with time management. I mean,
they were right up against the clock here too, that they were like, there was not much after this match other than, you know, she held the title and boom, they were off the air. I
imagine something must have got cut maybe towards the end, and maybe Parker didn't necessarily get the message, you know, but this was rather unfortunate because, you know, Shida, this is her first title defense, right? Coming off of last week. Yeah. And they're really like, first title defenses, I think, are really important, especially when you're, you know, a female wrestler being given the main event slot, you know, for a second week in a row. The pressure is there to deliver every instance. And this was not a good performance, unfortunately, whether it be due to timing issues or whatever else. You know, I'm sure they might have had to rush for much of it either, but I didn't think this was a very good match. And I'm hoping Shida gets another chance like soon, if not next week, just to kind of like, you know, establish this title reign with a better match.
Yeah, I don't think it really built to like kind of that big drama of a title match that you want, especially in a main event slot. And, you know, they didn't have a ton of time either. Like, this thing started like with 8 minutes to go in the show, plus you had a picture-in-picture in there. And the ending was just, to me, it just took whatever air was in the sails was out of it for the end. So a flat finish to the show. But that was Dynamite. And again, there was a lot of out of the ring segments by Dynamite standards, but with a purpose. Like, you're in building mode for the All In show. So that's, I mean, to be not necessarily expected on Dynamite, but like there's a purpose for all of it. So we're getting closer to All In. I guess, where is sort of your interest level of All In growing?
To me, much of it hinges on the Kenny announcement. I like, they can't fumble that, you know, because to me, he's just like Punk versus Joe. Unfortunately, like, I get it. It's a big match, but I would have been so much more interested in it if I didn't already see it and I didn't kind of know what.
Or if Joe had won, like if Joe had won, I think that like there's a bit more of an interest there of like Punk finally getting this elusive win that has plagued them for 20 years.
Yeah. FTR Bucks, you know, is going to be fantastic. So yeah. What else have we got right now?
Should have House of Black doing it. It seems like House of Black against the Acclaimed and Billy Gunn, with Billy like if he loses, he retires, and that can maybe the Acclaim get a big win at All In. I could see that being the trios championship, the direction you go. Maybe Cassidy and Moxley on this show, although you've got the Lucha Brothers involvement there as well. But
Darby and Sting versus the coffin match with the Mogul.
Coffin match, of course.
And the four-way.
Yeah, and maybe a British Casino Battle Royal.
A British Casino Battle Royal. Do they have what's different about a British casino?
It's not in the US. It's not in Vegas.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Yeah, it's building, but thus far, it seems like a typical AEW pay-per-view, without knowing, like, it's really going to hinge, I think, on the main event.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see that week. I think there's going to be, like, come that week, I think there's going to be a ton of buzz, and I think we know that the card will be what it is. It's like it's going to be a good wrestling show, but I think this is more about
atmosphere.
Does it feel like a historically significant card? That I think that's going to be the difference in terms of buys of people feeling like they did for the original All In or that ROH show at Madison Square Garden. Like, this is a historically important card, and I do think that is going to hit with people.
Yeah, I think that feeling is already there. I mean, barring like some spectacularly like bad match announcements, which I don't think we'll have. At the very
even with
least,
the card you've got now, I think it's I'm not worried about that. I'm more worried about All Out than All In terms of that turnaround and people coming back for another pay-per-view 7 days later. And maybe this AEW audience, like, they have surprised people. Like, maybe you will have that base come back, but to me, that's the much tougher show.
I'm confident like they'll both do well. Like, the question is like how much of the non-AEW fan, like the casuals, the WWE fan that might be tuning in just to kind of see what all the buzz is about this Wembley show, how many of them they might attract.
That's got to be a group in AEW sometime this year. That's when we'll know Tony Khan and the criticism is getting to him when he introduces a faction called the Casuals.
The Casuals, yeah. Maybe that was a rejected name for the Outcasts.
Okay, let's do if you want to throw in a super chat, you're welcome to. We also have a few pieces of feedback here.
Sino says it's a Casino Royale with cheese.
Oh boy.
In Europe. Lovely.
Let's go to Roman from Portland, who says, "Thank you, Tony Khan. It's been 3 weeks since we had a tournament in AEW, and I was starting to get withdrawals. Jack Perry's been watching the G1, judging by that low blow finish, and RVD looks damn good for his age. I only wish I could say the same about the Hardys. On a show as big as All In, do you think Cole and MJF should wrestle twice rather than get more people on the card? Personally, I would have loved Ospreay and Aussie Open against House of Black if they're not doing Ospreay Omega 3, but I'm sure the tag match will be good regardless." Listen, if they have a big storyline reason, which I think 100% they must if they're doing this, then I don't defer to just get as many people on the card as possible. It should be what is the most important elements, what is going to further your biggest story, and that to me would trump just making sure everyone gets a spot on the card. I'm not in favor of just everyone, you fit as many people on the card as possible. You have slots there that are going to create the best show and the direction of which you're going. And I'm sure this tag match, there's a clear reason for it. Now, after the fact, if it's a bad reason, by all means criticize, but I'm certain that they are going into this with like a clear reason of what this is going to set up for the main event, which is the match selling the show.
I agree. I totally agree. I mean, I don't think like any match on the show should be like a participation type of like, trophy, like I feel like everything should have a reason for being there, unless it's maybe something like a battle royal or Casino Royale with cheese, maybe that's what that's for. But I hope that there's a real solid reason for the story, why MJF versus Cole is there. And I have to imagine it'll be something that'll result in us being that much more interested in the main event that night. Let's go finally to Zubin, who says, "Evening, gents. Despite being a bit distracted by the influx of additional cats, happily added to my household with my girlfriend moving in. Congratulations to you,
cats.
Zubin.
That's plural.
Cats.
That's a relationship that's going to stick if he's bringing in multiple cats."
Oh my goodness, yeah. He says, "I enjoyed the show, especially the talking segment. Better than you babies promo. Oh, okay. Better than you babies promo was my highlight." In fact, I go as far as saying their storyline has superseded the Bloodline as the hottest storyline in wrestling. Tell me if I'm telling lies. Would you agree with that, John?
Zubin, I think you should tweet that out and see what the response is. I would just love it. That's like just throwing blood to the sharks out there. It would be great. Listen, I think that this Cole MJF, I'm not going to compare it to like the bloodline story that has played out now at this point for years, but I think people are. It's the hottest thing in AEW at this point by every discernible metric we can look at. And the fact is, I think everyone, to me, the key of the story is, are you intrigued to see where this is going? And you definitely are. And even though people know at the end of this, there's probably a turn coming, it's dramatic. And it's like you're building this. And instead of just, okay, they tag for a week, and then in week 2, one of them turned on each other, you've created this relationship. So when that turn happens, the audience is going to like have an emotional reaction to that because they've seen these two now have this connection and feel like they really are friends. And that should be the goal for anytime you do a breakup, that people care when they finally break up.
Yeah. It hard, hard to compare the two right now because one has already achieved so much, whereas the other is just getting started. But I mean, they're both great storylines, or at least this is a great storyline in the making. So you hope that it could achieve what the Bloodline story has achieved one day. We got a super chat here coming to us from Vincent Valentine, who sends $5. Thank you, Vincent. He says, do you think it's possible we get Ospreay Omega 3 on All In? What would be preventing them from doing so?
There's nothing preventing them from doing it, and
unless you might have some sort of like prior agreement with New Japan, like it's their match as well for them to decide where it goes, right?
Yeah, but we're not aware of that. So, I mean, the point would be it was like Omega is involved in this whole feud with Takeshita, and you'd be putting that off to the side, which is fine if you've got this match. It's a big match, and you don't need much to set it up. It's I lost to this guy, and I need to avenge this loss from Forbidden Door. And I'm going to do it in his home country in front of the biggest audience ever. And it will be the most definitive win of my career and the most definitive loss of Will's career.
He's still in the middle of this feud. I mean, it's only been, what, 2 months? A month and a half since the match occurred. So I think it's kind of perfect for, the stage is all too perfect for the end of the trilogy. And the only sort of obstacle I could see is that maybe like New Japan was promised this for Wrestle Kingdom or something. I think you just add a 4th chapter in that case, because this stage is too good to pass up. Will Ospreay, a hometown guy, or a home countryman wrestling in front of that crowd with a potential match of the year.
And his competition is going to be himself because he's taking on Shingo Takagi the night before. Could you imagine him doing Shingo and Kenny Omega on back-to-back nights?
Oh, Rev Pro. Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. Well, it's like a G1 routine, isn't it? But man, this could be your Hogan Andre, or Brett Bulldog, I'm
picturing Hogan going for the hey Andre, would you go up for the Tiger Driver? Yes, boss. So there you go. And next week as well, like if you're gonna have any New Japan involvement, like the G1 is out of the way, and next week would be the time to shoot those angles. So I think next week we'll know where they're going for.
And Eddie Kingston coming back.
Eddie Kingston coming back as well. So I mean, at the very least, you could put him on commentary.
He might stick around in Japan.
Actually. He might not. He might. Lost my passport, guys. Sorry.
He'll get a job at Kawada's restaurant, washing dishes or something.
Did you hear Kawada's going to All Out Weekend in Chicago? They're bringing him in for StarCast.
Really? Oh, wow. Okay. Yes. Interesting. There's a tag team right there.
That's the Chicago match.
Sting and Darby versus Eddie Kingston and Toshiaki Kawada.
Yeah. Did you hear that line? Dude, again, if you have not seen this video of Eddie Kingston meeting Kawada, like this man is just so happy. And you get like with the most glee, he just says, I wish so much he could face Taichi. Like if he could physically do it, of course. But I mean, he's just like
how kind. He's like, oh, I wish he could face his protege, rather than saying I wish I could face him, which is what I'm sure what he truly wants. But
he's like, I wear your colors out of respect. Like he's just, it was great. Amazing video that New Japan World did with Eddie Kingston going to the ramen noodle bar of Toshiaki Kawada's. All right. We are going to say farewell to those that are watching live. If you have downloaded the show, well, it just keeps rolling because here is my interview with Chris Hero. And for those watching live, we're hopping on over to the cafe to chat about the world, according to Marty Jannetty. And as Marty Jannetty used to always say, roll those credits.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.